By noon, the one guest everybody actually respected still hadn't answered his phone. By mid-afternoon, the bride had walked out on her own wedding. And by sundown, the most famous family in town, the family that spent the entire day getting dressed, still hadn't made it past a fence with a stop sign on it. Best wedding ever. I've covered break-ins, blackmail, and one guy who faked his own funeral for the insurance. But I had never, not once, covered a wedding. This spring, that changed. I was there the whole day, start to finish. I saw who started the war, who ended it, and who never made it inside. Stay with me on this one. One lake, two old families who agreed on exactly one thing. The other family was the problem. A hired wedding planner with a clipboard and a god complex. 6 kids nobody could control. 2 cousins nobody invited. 1 celebrity family that RSVP'd like royalty. And 1 very old, very slow guest on a very long journey across town. This is the Drake Quackenbush wedding. The story of how one bride took her day back from 2 feuding families and 1 hired clipboard. It almost didn't happen. And then it became the best day this lake has ever seen. Let me draw you the map, because by noon, the map is gonna matter. The lake belongs to the Quackenbush family, and it has for generations. Old money. Well, old bread, technically. But around here, that counts. Their daughter Lily is the bride, and everything on the west side is hers. Aunts, uncles, a wall of cousins. And her mother, who by all accounts had been planning this day since Lily could walk. The Drakes arrived that morning, the groom's side. Sharp, glossy, a little too pleased with themselves. The kind of family that travels in formation and knows it photographs well. Wesley Drake, the groom, came flanked by his 2 older brothers. And you could tell the 3 of them apart by exactly one thing. The brothers looked relaxed. Wesley looked like a man walking into a final exam he'd been studying the wrong subject for. Somewhere behind them, the brothers quietly opened a betting pool on what would go wrong first. By 4 o'clock, every line on that list had come true. And the list still wasn't the problem. Both houses came with matriarchs, and the matriarchs came armed. Granny Q, the bride's grandmother, arrived with her legendary bread pudding and the unshakable belief that no Drake in history has ever been fed properly. Grandmama Drake arrived with her legendary dessert and a face that said she'd already heard about the bread pudding. 2 heirloom recipes, 1 dessert table. Nations have gone to war over less. And between these 2 armies stood one professional. Bruno Barbary, wedding planner, hired by both families, paid by both families, and in his own private opinion, appointed by God. Bruno brought his entire staff, nieces, nephews, assistants, all wearing the same expression of matching seriousness. You've met a Bruno. Every family has hired one at least once. The group chat that morning was called Wedding Day, 3 exclamation marks, and it was moving fast. The Peacocks, the celebrity neighbors from 3 streets over, had RSVP'd with a single line, "We shall attend." The Hazel cousins had not RSVP'd at all, which worried everyone because the Hazels never RSVP. They simply appear, usually near the food. 2 families, 1 lake, 1 schedule. What could possibly go wrong before lunch? Lily found me early, before any of it started, away from the whole production. And that's the thing about weddings. Everybody watches the bride all day, and somehow nobody actually sees her. She came right up close and stayed a while, quiet, running her vows again and again under her breath. She wasn't nervous about Wesley. She was nervous about everyone else. Her family had opinions about the Drakes. The Drakes had opinions about her family. And she had spent months smiling like she couldn't hear any of it. I've stood next to a lot of people on their worst days. This wasn't one of those. Not yet. Meanwhile, the phone calls had already started. Old Sheldon, the elder, the one guest both families genuinely revere, the one who married Lily's parents to each other and Wesley's parents to each other back when both families were young, was not answering. He had left home 3 days earlier. 3 days. Nobody panicked at first. Sheldon moves at his own speed and always has. But the calls kept going out, and the calls kept ringing into nothing. And the aunties started doing that thing where they say, "I'm sure he's fine," in a voice that means the opposite. And here's what everyone forgot. Sheldon doesn't drive, and Sheldon hasn't accepted a ride from anybody since before the fence went up. The old man had launched his ancient rowboat and set out the long way. 3 days on the water, clear from the far end of the county, through every canal and lake between his dock and this one. Remember him. He matters more than anyone knew that morning. By 10, the street above the lake was parked solid, both curbs half the block. Guests arrived in waves, the bride's people, then the groom's, and for one shining hour, the two families managed themselves. Coats taken, kids counted, nobody checking which side anyone was on. There was even a real dispute. A drake parked in the spot one Quackenbush family has held by sacred unwritten law since before the fence went up. 2 big personalities, 1 spot, a wedding morning? That's a recipe. It lasted 30 seconds. Some wing waving, 1 joke about city folk, and they walked down to the water together, complaining happily like old friends. Turns out, 2 families can settle almost anything in 30 seconds when nobody official is watching. I want you to remember that parking spot because it was the last dispute this wedding solved entirely on its own. From here on, everything went through management, and management had plans. At 9 sharp, before the guests, before everything, Bruno Barbary had taken command, and by late morning, the lake knew what that meant. He inspected the shoreline like a general inspecting a front line. He moved seating, he removed seating, he measured the space between the 2 families in his own footsteps, wrote the number down, and declared half the lawn ceremonial do not touch. He scheduled the toasts and the pauses between them. I watched him schedule a moment of spontaneous joy for 4:40. And one detail explains the whole man. The Peacocks had RSVP'd. The Peacocks. Bruno had been chasing that family as clients for years, and today, at last, was his audition. This wedding was never a celebration to him. It was a portfolio piece, and everyone in it was furniture. His staff ran like clockwork because the clock was watching. His niece Rita handled logistics on the sidelines. Her husband Frank carried the spare clipboard. Remember those 2 as well. This story belongs to them more than anybody guessed that morning. And then Bruno said the sentence that would define the entire day. A young Quackenbush cousin wandered into the ceremony zone, and Bruno stopped him with 1 look and 1 line. You're either inside the circle of trust or you're decoration. The circle of trust. His words, his circle. By 10 o'clock, everyone at the lake had heard the phrase. By 11, everyone was quietly asking which side of it they were on. The Drakes assumed they were in. They're Drakes. They're always in. The Quackenbushes assumed they were in. It's their lake. How do you get more in than that? Nobody was in. It was Bruno's circle, and Bruno's circle had a population of 1. Here's the problem with hired dictators. Both families were paying him, so both families had to smile. Lily's mother smiled so hard, I got genuinely concerned. Wesley's brothers exchanged the kind of look that usually precedes property damage, then quietly added a new line to the betting pool. But nobody said anything, because it was a wedding. And at weddings, you swallow it. You swallow it right up until you don't. Drama doesn't clock in early. It waits for an opening. And before lunch, the groom personally handed it one. Wesley Drake had one mission that day: make Lily's family love him. A simple mission, an honest mission. And I want the record to show that every single disaster that boy caused, he caused out of pure weapons-grade good intentions. Disaster number 1, the children's procession. Aunt Marge, Lily's aunt, West Side royalty, had 6 little ones lined up to walk ahead of the bride. The full parade, rehearsed for weeks, scheduled by Bruno to the minute, positioned by the water like 6 small soldiers with one job. The kids were supposed to wait for the signal. Wesley, trying to help, trying to be useful, trying to be the good son-in-law, gave them what he sincerely believed was the signal. It was not the signal. 6 kids launched across that lawn in the middle of Bruno's welcome address like a tiny feathered invasion. Aunt Marge gave chase. The little ones took evasive maneuvers. They'd clearly trained for this their whole short lives. The Drake brothers laughed out loud, which was a mistake. Lily's mother declared it the most adorable thing she'd ever seen, which was a bigger mistake, because now the 2 families officially disagreed about it, and at this wedding, no disagreement stayed small. Bruno stood over the smoking ruins of his timeline and said very quietly, that was scheduled for 2:15. It was 11:40. The group chat lit up. Drake side, crying laughing. Quackenbush side, hearts. Dozens of hearts. Bruno staff, total silence. Silence in a group chat is never actually silence. That's when the whispering started along the shoreline. But the parade isn't what broke this wedding's seating chart. The next incident did. The buffet was staged on the side alley, just off the main lawn, guarded by exactly nobody. Because honestly, who robs a wedding? The Hazel cousins rob weddings. 2 of them, career professionals. One working the bench, one working the ground. A 2-man operation with the efficiency of a warehouse crew. I was walking past the alley when I saw them, already deep into the appetizers, moving product hand to hand like they had a truck idling around the corner. To this day, each family swears the Hazels came with the other side. The truth is simpler. The Hazels come with the food. Always have, always will. Wesley saw them too, and Wesley, the mission still burning in his chest, decided this was his moment. He would defend the buffet. He would save the day. He would finally be the hero this family needed. He went in with full commitment and 0 plan. And the appetizer table did not survive the rescue. Everything the Hazels had been stealing one piece at a time, Wesley redistributed all at once, everywhere in a single heroic crash. Hero, down. Again. A text went out from the bench moments later, and I quote it in full. Best wedding ever, bring bags. And now the blame game. Bruno blamed the Drakes for bringing chaos into his perimeter. The Drakes blamed the Quackenbushes, your lake, your squirrels, your security problem. Lily's Uncle Gus, the bride's side loudest heart, freshly fortified at the toast table, said just loud enough, maybe if someone hadn't hired a clipboard with legs, and Bruno heard every word of it. After that, the temperature at this wedding dropped 1 degree an hour. Oh, and Gus. Somewhere in the cleanup, Uncle Gus declared the bar officially open. His first toast was to the new family. His second was to the old family. His third was to the fallen appetizers in memoriam. Remember Gus. From here on, he only gets better. Now, every wedding has a control tower, and it is never the planner. At this one, it was 2 ladies at the pairs table, the Teal sisters. Widowed, decorated veterans of every family event on this side of town, seated, by their own arrangement, at the exact acoustic center of the lake. Close enough to the Drakes to hear everything. Close enough to the Quackenbushes to repeat it. And repeat it they did. All day. Both directions. With improvements. The uncle's clipboard with legs remark, the Teal sisters had it delivered to the east side inside 4 minutes. Except by the time it arrived, it had grown 2 extra insults and a dramatic pause. The Drake brothers, laughing at the parade, relayed west with expert commentary. They weren't laughing with the children, dear. They were laughing at the aunt. Nobody had said that. Nobody had to. No lie travels faster than a quote with improvements. The sisters weren't malicious, just bored, gifted, and handed the best programming this town had aired in years. But wars need broadcasters, the way fires need wind. Every family has its Teal sisters. If you can't name yours, it's you. By the time lunch was served, both sides were furious about at least 3 things that nobody had actually said. And the real things hadn't even started yet. By lunch, the wedding had a geography problem. 2 stone benches on the walkway, 1 for each family. That is not what benches are for, but that's what they became. Drake's at one bench, holding court, Quackenbushes at the other, holding grudges. Bruno's staff patrolling the gap between them like customs officers at a very small, very hostile border. And Bruno, order having failed him, leaned into separation instead and dressed it up in his favorite phrase. The inner circle sits here. The outer circle sits there. Guests will be seated, and I quote, according to trust. According to trust at a wedding between 2 families who came there specifically to become one. By early afternoon, nobody crossed the middle of the grounds anymore. West Lawn, the bride's people, whispering with their heads together. Across the way, the groom's people, posing like a brochure. The dessert table split down the middle. Bread pudding on one end, Grandmama Drake's tower on the other, and woe to the guest cot sampling both. And the middle of the grounds sat wide and empty, a demilitarized zone with folding chairs. 2 camps, 1 wedding. Or by that point, honestly, 2 weddings that happened to share a date. One guest refused to accept the new boarders, and it was, of course, Uncle Gus, several toasts deep by now and rising fast. He planted himself exactly between the 2 benches and delivered a heartfelt address on family unity, raising his glass to, and I quote him precisely, the Quackenbushes and the Quackendrakes. It was the only motion both families seconded all afternoon. Somebody get Gus a chair. The group chat flatlined. 47 unread messages, then nothing all afternoon. Each side quietly opened its own chat. I know this for a fact because the Hazel cousins were in both of them. Good informants worked the buffet and the feeds. Lock this in. Up to this exact moment, not one guest had done anything unforgivable. Not one. A botched parade, a wrecked buffet, a week of gossip. Families laugh that off every weekend of the year. What families do not laugh off is a hired professional drawing a line down the middle of their day and calling it trust. Remember who drew the line. It wasn't a Drake, and it wasn't a Quackenbush. Meanwhile, 3 streets over, the Peacocks. You have to understand who the Peacocks are in this town. They don't attend events, they land on them. They've been the headline of every backyard party, every ribbon cutting, every funeral they've ever graced. And one of those funerals wasn't even for anyone they knew. Preston Peacock had been getting dressed since sunrise. There are witnesses. The witnesses are exhausted. The tale alone is a 2-hour operation, and Preston does not delegate the tale. Madam Peacock, the family's own stylist, inspected the finished work and sent him back. Twice. At noon, the family called over to the lake. We're on our way. At 2 o'clock, a second call. Leaving now. You can't rush perfection. At 4, a third, delivered with royal serenity. Minutes away. They were not minutes away. By then, nobody at the wedding had seen so much as a glimpse of them. The bride's side stopped setting plates aside. The groom's side started a quiet betting pool of its own. The Drake brothers, diversifying. Somewhere in the middle of all that, Bruno and Preston found each other's numbers, and the two largest egos in the county had the text exchange of the year. Bruno, we run on a schedule here. Preston, schedules are for people nobody waits for. Frame that one and hang it in a museum. 3 streets away, the tale still wasn't ready, and one man's entire audition depended on it. Because back at the lake, the real story of this wedding was about to detonate. Not between the families, inside Bruno's own camp. Bruno's staff had been standing at attention since 9 in the morning. No lunch break, lunch wasn't scheduled for staff. No laughing wasn't scheduled for anyone. And Bruno's own niece, Rita, had spent the entire day posted at the sidelines with a perfect view of the West Lawn, where the Quackenbush kids were running wild, where somebody's uncle was telling a story with his whole body, where people were, there's no professional term for it, having fun. At 3 in the afternoon, Rita's phone buzzed. One message from the bride's side of the lake. I saw it later with my own eyes, so I can quote it exactly. You don't have to stand at attention at someone else's wedding. It's a lot warmer over here. Come across. She stared at that message for a long time. Then she showed it to her husband, Frank, a good man who had been holding Bruno's spare clipboard for 6 straight hours like a man holding his own leash. Frank read it once. Frank read it twice. Then Frank set the clipboard down on the grass, gently, the way you set down something you don't want to wake. Neither of them said a word. That's the detail I keep coming back to. There was no argument, no announcement, no scene. Just a look between 2 married people who had reached the same conclusion at the same second. And then came the moment this entire day had been building toward. The only thing I can compare it to is watching a fuse burn down in broad daylight while everyone's looking somewhere else. Rita and Frank set their badges down at the edge of Bruno's camp, turned around in front of everybody, and walked across the middle of the wedding, side by side, slow, deliberate. 2 calm, unhurried figures cutting straight through the no man's land, through the empty stretch nobody had dared cross since lunch. 2 members of Bruno Barbary's own family defecting in broad daylight in formation toward the enemy camp. I have seen a lot of power moves in my time. I have never seen one that quiet. The West Camp erupted. Cheering, actual cheering, stomping, somebody's aunt waving both arms, Uncle Gus bellowing 2 more plates, and then solemnly awarding the 2 defectors first place and second place, having entirely misread the nature of the event. The East Camp froze mid-pose. The Teal sisters, for the first time in recorded history, broadcast to both camps simultaneously, their finest professional hour. And Bruno stood at the edge of it all, watching his own niece walk out of his circle of trust in real time. And for the first time all day, the man with the schedule had absolutely nothing planned. Then everything went to the middle of the lawn. Both families closing in from both sides, meeting face to face over the invisible line. Drakes shouting about respect, Quackenbushes shouting about clipboards, Bruno trying to outshout all of them about protocol, which at that particular moment was a bold choice of Hill. Every feud, every seating decision, every insult swallowed since 9 in the morning came back up at once, right in the open at maximum volume. And the wedding? The actual ceremony, the vows, the rings, the entire point of the day had not even started yet. That's when I looked around for the bride. And the bride was gone. She passed right by me, close, the way she had that morning, except this time she didn't stop to rehearse anything. She walked down the shoreline, away from the crowd, away from the shouting, away from every single person who had come to that lake for her. And she kept walking until all of it, her mother, his brothers, the benches, the clipboard, was just weather somewhere behind her. She stopped beside me one more time. Same spot as the morning, same quiet, except that morning she'd been rehearsing vows under her breath. And now she wasn't rehearsing anything at all. Up close, you could see exactly what the day had cost her, and it didn't look like anger. It looked like arithmetic. She was doing the math on both families at once, and the math was coming up ugly. Then she walked on, and I let her. If they can't share a lake for one afternoon, what do the holidays look like? What does every birthday, every christening, every ordinary Sunday look like for the rest of their lives? You've run this math at least once about somebody. Everyone has. Wesley started after her and stopped. His brothers held him back, and for once in that entire catastrophic day, the Drakes read the room perfectly. There was nothing he could say out there that the last 6 hours hadn't already said louder. Behind her, the whole place went quiet, one voice at a time, the way a storm goes quiet. Not because it's over, because everyone finally saw where it had landed. Even the Teal sisters had no improvements to offer. She just left. And that exact minute is when the water at the far end of the lake began to move. Something old was coming in across the deep water, slowly. Everything Sheldon does, he does slowly. And this time, the slowness was the message. 3 days on the water. No answered calls, no updates, no ETA. Because he was rowing the whole way. One old boat through every canal in a town built for cars. At the speed of someone who decided a lifetime ago that arriving matters more than arriving fast. Old Sheldon. The one who married Lily's parents to each other. The one who married Wesley's parents to each other. The one name on that guest list that both camps pronounced with their voices lowered. He stepped out of his old boat and onto the sand in front of all of them. The frozen Drakes, the sheepish defectors, the speechless planner, and he did not say one single word. He just looked around, slowly, at what they had done to the day. And the whole lake went silent. The way you go silent when your grandfather walks into the middle of your argument and doesn't even bother to ask what it's about. The Drakes settled first, then the Quackenbushes. The two grandmothers, without exchanging a word, moved to stand together. First time all day. And Bruno, I will respect this forever. Bruno reached up and took his own name tag off. Nobody told him to. That's the part that counts. Because here is what Sheldon's 3-day crossing said without one word of it being spoken. He rode an entire town, alone, at his speed, through everything a town puts in the way of something slow. Because two families he loved were becoming one family today. Showing up matters. And every guest standing in that sudden silence suddenly remembered that they had come there for exactly the same reason he had. Lily came back on her own. Nobody went and got her. She saw the old man standing on the sand, the one who had married her mother to her father, and she walked home to her own wedding, straight through the middle of both families. She picked Bruno's retired clipboard up off the grass and set it on the dessert table, right between the two cakes. One sentence, very quiet, and the whole shoreline heard it. Anyone who still cares about sides can explain it to Sheldon. Nobody volunteered. The ceremony happened at the golden edge of the afternoon, and after everything, the parade, the buffet, the benches, the defection, the walkout, it was short, and it was perfect. and there wasn't a dry eye on either side.
The 6 little ones stood lined up ahead of the bride, still for once in their short lives, and on the correct signal, which Wesley, out of an abundance of caution, did not attempt to give. Aunt Marge stood over them like a general at a victory parade. And Lily came down the shoreline she'd walked away from an hour earlier. And this time, the whole lake walked it with her. She said her vows out loud, in the open, clear across the crowd, to Wesley and to both families at once. I won't pretend I got every word, but the shape of it, the part the whole lake repeats to this day, was this. I didn't marry your family, and you didn't marry mine. But look around. They all came. That's what family is. The ones who show up loud and stay anyway. Her mother cried. His mother cried. One of the Drake brothers turned his face away and would like history to record that he did not cry, and history declines. Wesley Drake, a man who had broken every single thing he touched since sunrise, finally had one job, and the job was 2 words long. He delivered both words without incident. First flawless execution of his entire day. The place roared. Uncle Gus rose to deliver a toast. 4 relatives rose faster and lovingly reseated him. He got 6 words in anyway, and the 6 words held up. Told you we were one family. Nobody corrected him. Nobody needed to. And then Bruno Barbary. Clipboard retired, circle disbanded, took a microphone nobody had handed him, and gave the only unscheduled speech of his career. A public apology, the announcement of the couple, and one line he clearly hadn't planned on saying out loud. I spent today protecting a schedule when I was hired to protect a family. Off script, unpaid overtime. The place roared for him, which, for the record, nobody had on their betting card. Rita and Frank stood front and center, still beaming, permanently famous. The grandmothers set their 2 desserts on one table, side by side, and declared a truce with frosting. And that line down the middle of the lake, the one drawn according to trust, gone, like it had never been drawn at all. Then the party started. The real one. The one nobody schedules. It ran long. It ran loud. It ran clean past sunset. Which brings us, at last, back to the best-dressed family in town. The Peacocks arrived at sundown. 9 hours of preparation. 9! And credit where credit is due, they looked magnificent. Preston came over the lawn with the full tail deployed, catching the last of the light like a parade float. Madam Peacock gliding at his wing, the whole family behind them in formation. Everyone in position for the grand entrance they had rehearsed in the driveway. To an empty lawn and a table of leftovers. The ceremony was over. The photographs were done. The party had already moved down toward the water. And the only witnesses to the most magnificent arrival in county history were 2 stone benches and what remained of the buffet. The Hazel cousins, reportedly mid-3rd shift somewhere off in the dark, are said to have saluted them with somebody else's bread roll. You can't rush perfection. You can, however, completely miss the point of it. And it gets better. Hunting for the after-party in the failing light, the Peacocks took a shortcut across the 1 yard in the entire neighborhood with a proper fence, a locked gate, and 2 signs. A stop sign and a no trespassing board. And that, friends, is where the evening chose to leave them. The most famous family in town, in full ceremonial dress, standing behind somebody's fence in the dark like the world's most glamorous lost luggage, stopped by signage. And somewhere down by the water, Bruno Barbary quietly understood the final score of his day. The audition of his career had played start to finish to an empty lawn. The clients of his dreams never saw a minute of it. The fence saw them instead. Old Sheldon rode 3 days through every lake in town
and made it in time. Now sit with that for a second. The updates? Because around this lake, there are always updates, and they're the best part. Bruno Barbary went back to work a changed professional. His new brochure now offers as a premium add-on authentic emotional moments, timing flexible. The man once scheduled spontaneity for 4:40. Growth is real. Rita and Frank host a dinner now, once a month. Both families, one table, no seating chart. The only rule of the house. Uncle Gus, who remembers roughly half of the best day of his life, has formally requested the Teal sisters' archives. Negotiations continue. The Drake brothers closed the betting pool at a total loss. Not one of them had everything works out on his card. The Peacocks issued a statement, of course, claiming they had chosen to observe the festivities from a private vantage point. The vantage point had a no trespassing sign on it. The Hazels had photos. The statement did not survive them. Preston's only comment since, next family event, we leave at dawn. The town is not holding its breath. And old Sheldon stayed a week, blessed the couple, ate diplomatically from both ends of the dessert table, and set out for home. The rowboat again. Naturally. Current estimated arrival? Autumn. But my favorite picture of that whole day comes from the very end of it. The after party glowed past midnight, down by the fountain. Every light in town doubled in the water. Both sides on one lawn, finally. Drakes telling Quackenbush stories like their own. Quackenbushes stealing Drake desserts with clean consciences. 6 exhausted kids asleep in one pile, mid-heist. Uncle Gus conducted the fountain lights until he fell asleep mid-movement, glass still raised. 2 Drakes carried him home like a fallen king. One family. He told you. And in the middle of everything, Rita and Frank, still famous, still slightly legendary in everyone's memory. So what was the circle of trust in the end? The whole lake. The kids who jumped early, the 2 who crossed over, the slow old man who rode a town to get there. Even the 2 professionals working the buffet in shifts. Everyone made it inside the circle, except the schedule. And Lily and Wesley stayed the latest of anyone. Last 2 by the fountain, the first hours of a marriage that started with a walkout and ended with the entire town on one side. Come spring, folks around here say this family counted 6 brand new faces down by the water. The Hazels have already RSVP'd to the christening. By not RSVPing. 3 days later, the newlyweds left for the coast. Salt water, big sky, no seating charts. What happened out there is its own story, and it earns the telling. That's the Drake Quackenbush wedding. The walkout, the defection, the fence, and the slowest guest in town who understood the day better than anybody standing. And if you had as much fun with these ridiculous families as I did, there's more. How this whole feud began long before the wedding, and what happened to everybody after. Both are stories for another day. Subscribe and I'll bring you the next one. Save me a seat by the water.